Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Easter. And if it's morning where you are, then good morning. And if it's evening, good evening. Welcome to Monday's Live from Home. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Anne, and I am Head of Education for the VOCES8 Foundation. And my job today, my pleasure, is to take you through an introduction to some of our education work and the impact of that education work. So I am going to share a presentation with you so that you can see some photographs and videos and some key pieces of information to help you as I take you through some education. So we're going to start the slideshow. Right, and you'll see me now as a little floating person, the top of your screen. I may move me around every now and again, depending on where things are in the slides. So, the VOCES8 Foundation and our education. We're going to look at impact of some of our projects. And today I'm going to focus on projects that take place in the UK and are a regular part of our programme. So it's difficult to decide, given that we reach so many people each year. So it's difficult to decide which projects to look at for you in this Insights presentation. And I will be in the future looking at some of our other projects and looking at things from different angles. One of the things I'm going to say today is that I'm going beyond the numbers. So we reach over 40,000 people a year around the world. And that in itself is an incredible impact. But I am going to go beyond those numbers to look at some of the other impacts that we have. I should say that even choosing what to look at in the UK wasn't easy, because if I give you an example of a couple of things, in November 2019, so not that long ago, our team reached 32 secondary schools, 32 high schools across London and Essex, just in November alone. And then in January, just in January alone, we reached over 500 primary school children. So that's just 2 months in this current academic year, and the sheer numbers here in the UK is large. And then, of course, we're looking around the world as well. So how then did I decide, or what focus did I decide to take for this Insights, this little tour through our education? And I struggled with it a bit, and then I got to thinking about those special moments, the magic moments that we have in our lives where something wonderful is opened up to us. It touches us in some way. It makes a real impact on us, changes us in some way. And if you think about it from a musical point of view, that might be the first time you ever saw a live concert, whether that be a choral concert or maybe an instrumental one. And it might then set you on a path to singing in a choir or playing a particular instrument. It might be the first time that you went to see or hear VOCES8 or Apollo 5, and then you fell in love with how they sing. And so that had an impact on you in terms of who you like to listen to and who you like to follow. Some of you may attend our summer school and festival at Milton Abbey, and your first visit there may have had a real impact on you in terms of working with Barney and the singers, with Paul, hearing the concerts, singing in the concerts. So that's the kind of thing I was thinking of, and I've decided to look at magic moments for me as head of education for the foundation and use them as the starting point for what I share with you today. So my first magic moment that I've chosen actually took place a little over a year ago at Trinity College Chapel, and it links through the impact of our Young Leader programs, which I'm going to tell you about. But I want to start with this moment. So you see here a picture of some of the secondary school, high school students who participated in a Young Leader project. And the project itself is called Roots, and it takes place in Cambridgeshire. And we're now in our second year of delivering this project. And this picture at Trinity College, Cambridge, with the young people and with VOCES8 and with Chris Wardle directing, was at the final concert for last year's project. And all these young people heard VOCES8 and then also performed with them. Now, my partner, Francis, and I were sitting behind this particular group of teenagers during the first half of the concert, listening to VOCES8. And when we came to the interval, we began chatting with the teenagers to ask them, what did they think? Had they enjoyed it? Just really interested to see what their comments were. And Francis had been concerned because there's some Monteverdi madrigals in the concert, and these were probably a little heavy going for people of this age, and particularly as almost all of these young people were experiencing their first ever live concert of high quality choral music. So, and they certainly would not have been listening to Monteverdi before. And so Francis asked them what they thought, and did they understand what the music was about? Would they have liked some notes about it? And one of the girls piped up and said to him, in fact, I think she was quite annoyed with them. She said, well, Barney explained all about the pieces before they sang them. Of course we understood them. Weren't you listening? Now, in itself, that's a wonderful moment, because clearly she had been listening and she was completely engaged with the VOCES8's performance. And then she's also in this photo and she's very engaged in singing with them. So that was a wonderful moment, a young person's first experience of Monteverdi, of VOCES8 in concert in Cambridge. Very powerful. But it also goes beyond just that moment, because it was very special for me, because I knew a little bit more about the background of this young person. The young people before this concert had also prepared to lead and then led workshops in primary schools. So 2 weeks prior to the concert, I was in these primary schools with the young people and with Chris and members of Apollo 5 as the students led the workshops for the primary school children, and they did a fantastic job. And I also had the opportunity to interview the music teachers from the high schools. So in talking to one of the music teachers, we just seen a particular group of her students leading a workshop, and she said, well, for me, one of those teenagers, what the impact on her has been amazing, because she has trouble behaving in lessons and in fact was at risk of being excluded from school. She's 12 years old. At that time she was 12, at risk of being excluded from school. But she really loves music, loves singing, and she desperately wanted to be part of the project. So a deal was struck between the senior leadership team and the music teacher and the girl in question, that if she behaved not just in the singing sessions with us, but also in all her lessons, she could do the project. But if she didn't, if there were problems in her lesson, she couldn't do the project. Well, she had behaved throughout, which, given that she was on the point of being excluded from school, was very, very good. We certainly hadn't seen evidence of bad behavior in our sessions. She'd been enthusiastic, she'd worked hard, and that morning, before I interviewed the teacher, she'd got up and done some wonderful leading in workshops. So you can see why the moment at the concert was very special for me, but it goes even further than that, because we had an external evaluation done of this Young Leader project. And when I received that, I discovered that the music teacher had mentioned this girl again to the external evaluator. And she'd told her about the fact that this girl had behavior problems, and that she'd done the program throughout and behaved in lessons throughout. She's in care, So her carers were not able to come to the concert. However, they watched it. We live streamed the concert so that families as well as our followers could see it if they couldn't come to the concert. And then we also sent the schools, participating schools, links so they could show the concert to their students and share that on their website, etc. So it had a really wide reach, and we need to keep that in mind because her carers saw this performance online and they told the school they couldn't believe that she stood still and behaved like a professional performer when she sang with VOCES8. Her other teachers were amazed when they saw the film of the performance at how she was behaving and how professional she was. So the project had an impact on this young person, giving her the skills, and it's clearly something she loved doing, but it also then had an impact on others' perception of her because her teachers and her carers were amazed at what she achieved. So that was a very special moment times 3, really. And at the time of the external evaluation for this project, this girl was still in regular lessons. Her behavior had not escalated again to being bad. So unfortunately, I don't know where she's at this year, but I would hope that it made an even longer difference to her behavior. So just to tell you a bit about the Young Leader Programme, I chose it because of course that moment came to mind, and also it's a regular project. It's one we deliver in the UK and in fact across the UK every year. So for example, this academic year, we've led a Young Leader Programme with 5 London secondary schools, and then a primary school was involved. I'll explain about that in a moment. We've done it in Cambridgeshire, and we just begun one earlier this year in Sheffield. So on an average year, we might work this is just with the young leaders, with about 300 teenagers learning to be young leaders, sometimes considerably more, but it's sort of an average, about 300. And what the project does is one, or it can be more, secondary schools or high schools get involved, and they have students from their school, and sometimes from other schools, come together and they host it. And our singing leaders deliver sessions training these teenagers how to lead workshops for primary school children. So this includes, we do warm-ups with the young leaders, the VOCES8 method. We teach them a song which they can perform with our singers, and then we also teach them songs that are appropriate for younger children so that they can teach those to younger children and then sing them with these younger children. Importantly, we also obviously teach all these to the young people, but then they have to look at with us how we teach them. How do you demonstrate a warm-up and get young children to participate in it effectively? How do you teach a song? So it's the what and it's the how, and it's managing a room and the leadership skills and working together as a team, because the young people usually work in little groups when they actually do their leading. So once they're prepared, they then lead singing workshops for children, and this can be whatever age the participating primary schools would like them to work with. So it could be anything from year 1, which here in the UK, that's 5-year-olds, 5 and 6-year-olds, right through to sort of year 5, so 10-year-olds. And they will either spend a day in a primary school or primary schools doing this leading with members of our team there to support, but the young leaders do the leading, it's not us. Or sometimes the children will come to the secondary school and we'll do it there. So that's what the Young Leader program is. And to just give you a bit more feedback from the Cambridge one, we very often work in schools where the area has a high level of deprivation, where the young people may not have high aspirations. Their schools are certainly encouraging them to, but they may not. and they probably don't have opportunities to work with professional, high quality ensembles. So I have some quotes from last year's evaluation. We haven't done an evaluation for the Cambridge, this is for the Cambridge project this year, because we were interrupted by the virus and haven't quite finished the project with those young people. But one of the teachers described the area where her school is an area that isn't of high aspiration. So she then talks about the young people getting up and leading workshops for 60 primary school children. And she uses the word massive thing. And then just quite coincidentally, the other secondary school teacher used massively again. So clearly both teachers saw the incredible impact, positive impact on their students in terms of their self-esteem and their confidence. They got up and led workshops, and they were seen as role models, in fact. And then the last one, the CEO of one of the schools likened having a concert with the students performing in this concert at Trinity College with VOCES8 as having their school football team play at Old Trafford. I did have to giggle at that one, but that is actually a really important positive impact, because it's quite likely that the CEO of that school and a lot of the teaching staff haven't had many musical experiences and maybe didn't realize what the impact could be. So that too is very important when we are looking at evaluating the project. It's not just the impact on the young people, but also on the teachers in the school and their perception of what music can bring to their students. The project is called Roots, as I mentioned. It's a partnership project, so I've just put the partners up here so you can see. We often work in partnership. It's a great way to involve more people, to ensure that we are working with the people who need to be reached, who are going to benefit the most. And you'll see that the University of Cambridge is one of the partners in this Roots project. And I hope that I'll have another time to tell you more about that partnership and what else we're doing, which is very exciting in terms of our education in the UK. This slide also shows the trust foundations, the grants that we have in support of the project, the Arts Council and the Chapman Charitable Trust. So I mentioned earlier that in thinking about impact, and I want to go beyond the numbers. So just the sheer numbers that we work with is an incredible impact. But beyond that, I want to look at developing skills. And I've touched on that already. And those young people developed leadership skills, leading singing workshops, and their confidence, raising aspirations, as one of the teachers mentioned, training the workforce, which I'll come to. Those secondary school teachers commented about going on and using some of the things that we do with their choirs and their students. But I'm going to go into more detail about training the workforce when I look at some of our work in primary schools. The impact on learning. So I'm sure we've all seen, if not the actual academic studies, then press releases about studies showing the impact that learning an instrument, singing, music can have on literacy, so reading, language skills, maths, cognitive, executive function, all those things. And I am going to look a little bit at that as well. And then important to see the legacy of the project. So because we are based in the UK, when we go in to do these projects, the last thing that I want us to do is to helicopter in, and everyone has a wonderful time, it feels very inspired, but then we're gone and nothing else happens, or there isn't a legacy based on what we did in the area with the young people and teachers that we worked with. So before I move on from the young leaders, I'd like you to try answering a question or questions that I ask when I evaluate our young leader programs. And the questions are, can learning to lead singing workshops for children, so these teenagers that is, are learning to lead workshops for younger children? And can that have a positive impact on their musical skills, their leadership skills, and their confidence? So through my moment and the Cambridge project, you saw a bit of that positive impact. And now I'm going to show you 2 video clips from a recent London project. So 5 London secondary schools, some students from each participated in the Young Leader Programme. And here they are, 2 groups of them in a London primary school leading warm-ups at their workshop day in February. So here is the first video, and these are girls from one of the schools leading a warm-up. So we're going to watch that, and then we're going to watch another warm-up, and you can have a think about what you think the impact was on those skills for these young people.
One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So that's the first one. Here's the second one. Apologies, this one is very short. When I was filming this, someone came along and tapped on my shoulder and had a question for me, and I stopped filming, and I really wish that hadn't happened. You'll see that, and you've probably experienced this, that quite often there are fewer boys interested in singing once they get to secondary school. So unless the schools has a long tradition, say, of big choirs and whatnot, you will find that there are fewer boys interested. So I particularly like this one because the boy who's leading, he really did an amazing job, in my opinion. So I wanted to show you at least this little clip so you could see a little bit of the warm-up he led.
Spaghetti bolognese. Spaghetti bolognese. So can you all stand up?
Okay, so what did you think? Did you think that the leading these workshops, learning to lead them, has a positive impact on those young people? I'll leave that with you. I'm going to just show you a little bit about the evaluation of this project. So the one that finished in February of this year, City of London schools. 17 of the students filled out the questionnaire. So it's a small group, but it's still, we'll have 17 responses to look at. There are 13 girls and 4 boys who filled it out. And part of the questionnaire included a series of statements, and they had to circle their reaction to the statement, respond to the statement with on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being strongly agree, and 3 not sure about the statement, and 5 strongly disagree. So I'm going to show you some of the questions that they had to, or some of the statements that they had to respond to. So the first one was about their leadership skills, and did they feel that the project had helped develop their leadership skills. So if we have a look here, sorry, I'm just moving my thumbnail around. 15% strongly agreed it helped, and 31% agreed. So we've got 81% of the students agreeing that it helped develop their leadership skills, and just 19% were unsure. So for teenagers, and that's particularly good because it's scary for all of us to get up and lead a workshop. But for teenagers who haven't done this much before, and you know, they're developing, confidence doesn't always come quickly for them. So I'm quite pleased with that impact. And then if we look at what they said about their confidence, so 44% strongly agreed that the Young Leader Project helped build their confidence, 31% agreed, 25% were unsure. So, you know, that's really, really very good as well, because young people participating came from a real mix. One school was an independent school, but the others were not independent schools. And some of those students came from very disadvantaged backgrounds. And so confidence, especially in those disadvantaged backgrounds, when they get into unfamiliar situations and mixing with students from all different backgrounds, it's an added thing that can be quite scary. It takes them more time to get comfortable. So I'm not too worried that 25% were unsure. And of course, I have an insight that they also have wonderful teachers at their school who are going to take this forward and continue working on this kind of thing with the students. So that might change in time as well. The other big one is the legacy. Did they think they'd continue to use the leadership skills? And 75% strongly agreed that yes, they would continue to use them. 13% agreed, and 12% were unsure. So really, overall, a very positive impact on those young people. And you'll probably be asking, well, how do I decide what questions to ask and where do I get these ideas from? So I'm always keeping an eye on different types of evaluation and going on courses and things. And for the Young Leader one, in 2016, we actually had an external evaluation done by the wonderful Professor Susan Hallam. And so she learned about the project through me and worked out questionnaires for pre and post project. And we had over 100 students who were participating in the Young Leader Project that year fill these questionnaires out. So I continue to use some of those questions and of course adapting and changing according to each cohort that we work with. If you aren't familiar with Professor Susan Hallam, if you have a look for The Power of Music, that's one of her seminal papers. And in fact, Paul was inspired to and built the VOCES8 method around the things that Professor Hallam says in that paper. So The Power of Music would be a good place to start with her work. So if we just have a quick look at, just so we can compare the London group of teenagers and some of their responses this year to the 2016 external evaluation done by Professor Hallam, you can see that they were asked, did they think that the Young Leader Programme helped develop their leadership skills? And 98% agreed that it had. They were asked about it building their confidence, and you can see that 76% strongly agreed and 80% agreed. And there were a small percentage that disagreed. But if you then start to get to know the young people in context, you'll often find that there are some challenges in their backgrounds or things that make it more difficult for them to grow in confidence. So again, this is really a very positive result overall. And that's just a small picture of that study. You can find that on our website, the complete evaluation by Professor Hallam. Now, I'm going to leave the Young Leader Programme and begin talking about music in primary schools. But before I do that, I haven't told those of you who don't know me anything about me. So just so that you know a little bit more, and hopefully that will give you an understanding about where I'm coming from when I'm working with these projects as well. First of all, to address the accent, it's a Canadian accent. I'm from Canada, and I really hope that some of our Canadian fans are watching this. I, of course, have met some of you, and I know that Canada loves VOCES8, and those of you that have come across Apollo 5 love them as well. So I grew up in Canada. I went to university in Canada. I sang professionally in choral ensembles, and then I decided to train to teach. So I actually did a grown-up gap year and came to London, where I did what we in Britain call the postgraduate certificate in education, and I did it in secondary school music education. I went back to Canada. I actually taught at Canada's National Ballet School in the academic department. I taught music there for 2 years in Toronto. And then I came back to the UK. And I've been here now for it's nearly 17 years. And at first I taught, and then I ran a music department, a very large music department in an independent boarding school. And it was at that school that I met VOCES8 and then Apollo 5. Paul Smith actually came to see me not long after I'd begun being head of music at the school, and asked if I'd be interested in having the group come and do some workshops and a concert. And that was the beginning of essentially a residency for VOCES8 and Apollo 5 to work not only with the students at the independent school and with my choirs, etc., but also be involved in the outreach work that we did in the community with primary and secondary schools. And then when I was deciding where to go next, career-wise, I was really interested in what arts organizations do in the community and with schools. And I was thinking more about the outreach side of it. And the foundation was advertising. So I was fortunate enough to get the job, and I've been working with the foundation now for 5.5 years. So back to our moments. I want to talk to you about music in primary schools, and I'm going to begin with 2 magic moments. The first magic moment relates to those City of London schools young leaders, but particularly the primary school where they led the workshops, because the magic moment for that was the feedback that came via the teachers and the children at that school. The deputy head teacher arranged our visit, and we've actually taken young leaders to that school 3 times now. And I asked her for feedback, and she came back to me and said that it had been a pleasure to have the young leaders. They were positive role models for the children at her school, both musically and in the way they interacted with the children, including they spent time with them at lunchtime in the playground. And her classroom teachers also said the same thing, that they were excellent role models. And they led the workshops really professionally and beautifully. And she felt they were great role models for both singing and for what the children could aspire to. So that's a special moment. And then as we move into looking at our projects, specifically with primary schools, I'm going to, in a minute, tell you about another special moment. And it'll give you a picture of some of the schools that we work in and the things that the schools are up against, so to speak, or the challenges that they face and where we are aiming to help. So, music in primary schools in the UK. Did you know that many primary schools across this country don't have a specialist music teacher? So by that, I mean they don't have anyone on staff who is a musician or who's trained as a musician and, importantly, trained to teach music. Some of these schools don't even have a weekly music lesson for every class in the school. They have a mixed bag of projects and things and singing assemblies, but not regular music lessons. Teacher training here in the UK for primary school teachers. So these are teachers that are going to go on to teach one of the grades, one of the years, generalists, so not music specialists, general teachers. They will get a range of support for teaching music, art, drama, PE. For music, that support is very tiny. It can range from a 2-hour session, at 1 2-hour session, and that would be the only thing in their whole year of the course, up to they might get 8 hours, so maybe 4 2-hour sessions covering different things. If they're placement schools where they're doing their teacher training, don't have much music, they're not going to get any support there or even opportunity to try out something that they've learned. The Incorporated Society of Musicians, the ISM, here in the UK, did a survey about how primary school teachers felt about teaching music, and only 8% reported feeling confident. So that gives you just a small picture of what's happening in primary schools, and it's budget constraints and its academic pressures, it is impossible for schools to have a music teacher and to have regular music and be providing this for their children. There are schools that do it and do it wonderfully well, but a number of factors, including this pressure on core subjects and those results, and then tight school budgets mean that many schools do not. And as we have fewer and fewer teachers who are getting the training to do it, that's also creating problems. So where do we start? What can an organization like ours do? How do we know what to do best? We know we can inspire children and teachers, teach them warm-up songs. Our London-based schools can then come to our VOCES8 Centre to have a performance with one of our groups. And those are wonderful opportunities. But will they have a legacy? What can they do beyond those wonderful experiences? And we have to remember that we are an organization that has performing at its heart and education. So we don't have a team that can visit a school every day or once a week throughout a year. So again, I asked, where do we start? What can we do? And I mentioned partnerships earlier on, and one of the key partnerships we have in the areas we work is with what the UK calls music hubs. So these are organizations, they used to be called the Music Service, some of them still are. They provide peripatetic teachers to schools who want to hire them to go in and teach instrumental lessons. They advise schools, can help support them in delivering classroom music. They have youth ensembles in their areas, Saturday music schools, that kind of thing. And they work with outside organizations, including ones such as ours. So we can work with a music hub to get some funding together, and we can help support their singing strategy, or they may want a big sing event. So we skill up teachers to teach some songs, and then the children all come to sing with our groups. That's what a music hub does, and organizations like ours and orchestras, they will work with their local music hubs. So in talking to our music hubs, one of the things that continually came up was that organizations such as ours were not offering so much for older children in primary schools. So for example, not offering much for younger children. So children ages 4, 5, 6, and 7. And over here, Key Stage 1, that's year 1 and year 2. So ages 5 to 7. They were offering more for the slightly older children in primary school. So I was asked, could we do more for the younger children? And I thought, well, yes, that'd be huge fun. We love working with that age group. And we also discussed with that age group in particular, teachers could and should be able to do some singing, even if they aren't music teachers. But as we saw, teachers aren't confident, they're not getting the skills. So I ask again, where do we start? Well, we start by skilling up these teachers of those age groups and working with those children. And now to my moment before we look at impacts of singing. My moment took place in January in a primary school in Tower Hamlets. Tower Hamlets is a borough in London, and we've been working with 5 Tower Hamlets schools across this year. And this particular school has 60% of the children speak English as a second language, and over 50% receive free school meals. So it's an area of very high disadvantage. And one of the children in year 1, and we'll call him Ahmed, that's not his real name, but we'll call him Ahmed. The teacher was telling me that he was refusing school. And so at that point, he was 5 years old. He was very anxious about school, refusing to come. And they were needing to get outside help, social service help, to support the family and help deal with this, get him into school. And on our visits to lead singing workshops in the school, that particular day, he was in school. He was desperately upset, in tears all morning. She had no idea what he would do when they went into the school hall to do singing with us. But she couldn't believe it. She said, did you notice a little boy was crying? And I had seen it, but he did stop crying, and she'd had an eye on him. He went from tearful, not talking or participating in things, to the tears stopped. He was more and more curious about what we were doing. Soon he was participating, and then he was laughing, giggling along, and even answering questions as well as singing. And it went on from there. So that in itself was a very magical moment, but it went on from there because Ahmed always wanted to know when we were coming in to do singing, and they didn't have any trouble with him coming into school on the days when our singing team was there to lead workshops. But also he was absolutely loving the singing that his classroom teacher was doing with the children, because we were skilling her up how to lead singing with the children, and he really enjoyed those sessions as well. So that was a very magical moment in that school, and that looks at an emotional impact and the well-being of the child. So let's have a look here at some of the well-known impacts, the impacts we talk about for singing. Singing is good for listening skills, and we know that from singing in a choir. And it's also very good for children, listening to each other. Concentration. Again, we know that as adults, and for children, singing as a class, singing in a choir, teachers regularly report that they see improved concentration and focus. Confidence. We saw that with the young leaders, for example. Teamwork. We see that with the young leaders working in teams, and we can see it with choirs, of course, and groups of children. A sense of social inclusion, a sense of belonging if we're singing in a group, because we're all doing the same thing. Cognitive skills. So I mentioned that briefly in terms of reading, literacy, maths, and things like executive function, so memory, remembering things, whether that be words or tasks. So singing, we believe, has an impact on those skills. So what do we ask then if we know that those are some of the things that singing has a positive impact on? What do I, as the head of education, we as an organization, ask when we are working on a project in terms of what impact does it have, what can we do? And this is not an exhaustive list, this is just a very short list. Well, we need to ask, what outcomes are we seeking to achieve? Because obviously we can't waltz into a school or into a community and just deliver some singing. What it is it that we would like to achieve by doing that project? What does success look like? So what would a successful project consist of? What would we see at the end of that project? And that would constitute it's been successful. And again, legacy. Will it be a lasting impact? When we finish and go away, will what we've done continue to impact on the people who participated in the project? What are participating teachers gaining? Are they developing their skills? And I think that's really important. Gaining resources, so songs and warm-ups to use, is fantastic. And if you're a music teacher, you'll generally be quite confident in using those new things, particularly if you see our team using them first. But what about non-specialist teachers? So they are not music teachers. Are they developing their skills? What are they gaining from having a singing project? And also, the thing that I always like to ask, what's our team learning? And are we applying that learning as the project continues and in other projects? So are our singers who I work with regularly, are they learning and applying that learning? Because if we don't grow and develop, we won't be doing the best for the people who participate in our projects. So If we put all of that together, we're thinking about primary schools who do not have music teachers. We're thinking about those younger children. We're thinking about my moment with Ahmed and the impact singing was having on his well-being. We're thinking about the questions that I've asked. I thought I wanted to do some research, so have an external evaluation looking at a specially developed project for these children in year 1, so 5 and 6-year-olds, and importantly, their teachers. So I approached Professor Graham Welch at the University College London Institute of Education there, a world-renowned researcher in music education, and one of his specialties is singing development in younger children. And his team, Dr. Joe Saunders and Dr. Ross Purvis, and then also they had 2 other researchers involved. And I worked with Hackney Music Service. Hackney's an area that we work a lot in. We work very closely with their music service and their schools. And they helped us choose schools to participate in this project. And I put together a project that involved teacher training for the classroom teachers. And those classroom teachers would also observe the singing sessions that our singing team, including Greg, was involved in. And we've got a picture of him there, led with the children in year 1. And these teachers observed all these and also had training with me, and then were given resources, materials, and advice in between all our sessions in order to sing every day. So that was the key thing. They needed to sing every day with their classes. And so we'll have a look at where these schools were. These maps delve into specific areas in London. This is the area in Hackney where we were working, and these are the indices of deprivation. They're showing the level of deprivation for young people aged 15 years of age and younger. So they live in income-deprived homes. Dark red are areas of very high deprivation, and then the palest red is lower deprivation. So if you look, there's one area of dark red, for example, where 51.2% of children aged 15 and younger are living in deprivation. We also look at the background of the people living in this area. So again, the darker the area, the higher percentage of people from Black, Asian, ethnic minority backgrounds. So again, we were working in areas with anything from 53.4% to 46.5% people from different backgrounds, which then, just by its nature, quite often meant that a very high percentage of children that we worked with were speaking English as a second language. And so not only were they coming from income-deprived homes, but again, they were speaking English as a second language. And we really wanted to look at the impact of the singing project on schools and children like these to see if what we did could make a difference and what kind of difference that would be. So there were 3 schools. We had 2 participating schools and a control school, and they all fell into a similar band, obviously, with high percentage of children getting free school meals, English as a second language, and different backgrounds, major backgrounds including African, Bangladeshi, Turkish, Caribbean, and Indian heritage. And again, school B, very similar in terms of backgrounds and numbers, either speaking English as a second language or needing free school meals. And the control school, again, similar backgrounds. So we delivered the project, which, as I said, involved teacher training and sessions in schools. And it culminated in the schools having a performance, a workshop and performance at the VOCES8 Centre with Apollo 5. And the researchers looked at singing behaviour and development. So obviously we wanted to see if the children's singing progressed. They looked at their reading, their sense of social inclusion, their sense of quality of school life. Were they happy at school? Did they have friends? This kind of thing. Importantly, looking at the self-efficacy of the teachers, the classroom teachers in leading singing, and measuring the children's executive function, so looking at working memory and their cognitive flexibility. And the researchers did this with a mix of questionnaires, and the children undertook particular tests for their executive function, looking at reading scores. And this was all prior to the project starting and post-project. And also the researchers observed us, so our team, leading singing sessions, and also they observed the teachers leading singing when we weren't there. Now, I would love to give you all the details of the evaluation of this project, but we haven't released it openly to everyone yet. So I'm going to share some highlights with you. And I don't think I've said that the project, we delivered it between January 2019 and July 2019. So the analysis of all the data was completed in December and January. And we have a report, and that will eventually be out to the public. But excitingly, Professor Welch has been asked to do a presentation about the paper in Finland, although I don't know that that will happen, that he'll be able to travel there, but they may do that online. And UCL, University College London, also wants to feature the project and the paper. So one of my key things was to have other people looking at what we do, learning from what we do, seeing what is possible. So you will in time be able to see the whole report, but in the meantime, I'm just going to give you some highlights. So we did see improvements in the children's singing. Those of us leading the sessions could definitely hear it and see it, but it also came across in the post-project tests. Positive correlations between the singing, the reading of the children, and executive function. And I should add at this point that we did have a control school. So the same demographic of children, same age, who did not have all the singing sessions with us and the teacher training. And I should say that the school agreed to this, and we had ethical approval from the university, but also during last year, other children in that school received an intensive singing project. So older children did. And the year one children did get one session with different singing leaders who weren't leading singing with the participating schools. So that school was not left out. It did get opportunities, which was very important to us to make sure that they did. And then this academic year, their current year one children had a singing project with our singing team. So, but having a control group meant obviously that we could do some comparison, although naturally there are challenges with that too. This one, classroom teachers are more confident about leading singing with their classes. And this is so important, I can't stress it enough. And it's a big, big highlight of the evaluation and of the project as a whole. And we can see that 8 months after the project finished, participating teachers continue to sing every day with their classes. So you remember I said that the project, the teachers were to be doing singing every day. We asked them to do 5 to 10 minutes. In one of the schools, that was often 15 minutes they were actually doing. And both schools have carried on, participating schools, with singing every day. And the impact's even stronger than that in that particular school. But let's look for a moment at the legacy for us as a foundation. So what are long-term impacts for us? So we've, with the project that I developed and we led, we learned from the evaluation, and we shared the project with other music hubs, and we are continuing to support the participating schools, and as I said, the control school as well. We did a project, but also we've rolled out the project to a further 6 primary schools across Hackney and Tower Hamlets. So that's roughly 300 and some children currently, and we've got the break right now, but that have been participating in this project, and their teachers are getting the training. And plans are underway to deliver the project with even more schools, starting in September 2020 and running through to the end of the academic year in 2023. So that is very exciting. We still need more funding for it, but we have a start. And the interest in the London schools, because we are based in London, so we work a lot there, has really grown to have this project. So very important. Then if we go to the schools, School B, participating school, in fact now does singing every day in years 1, year 2, and year 3. And the teachers, the 2 classroom teachers who participated in the original project, have supported the other classroom teachers in leading singing. And when we go there as our follow-up to work with the children and the teachers, it's just fantastic. You can see the progression with the year 2 children who did it in year 1, excellent. And with the teachers in year 1 who are doing it with the cohort's not new now, but they started off with a new group of children doing brilliantly. And year 3, which I'll tell you a bit more about in one more magic moment. So it said the standard of singing has continued to improve. It's wonderful. And School A's year 1 teacher continues to sing every day with her class. And she's attended extra training, singing leading training sessions led by other organizations. So very exciting. We made a video to highlight Sing Every Day and the project, and you can find it on our website. But I thought if I got lucky and the Wi-Fi here at home worked, I might even be able to play this for you. But if I can't, then I would encourage you to go to the VOCES8 Foundation website, VOCES8.Foundation. And if you haven't already watched this video, then please do, because you will see the children and their excitement. Now, I'm just going to flip to this picture for a moment and tell you my last magic moment was with that School B and the year 3 children. So the year 3 children are 8 years old. Yes, 8 years old, 8 to 9 years old. And one of their 2 classes, and one of the class teachers actually participated in the project when she was a year 1 class teacher. And then she was moved to year 3 because the school felt that she would be very good for this particular group of children, as some of them were not engaging very well with school. And she knew them because she taught them earlier in their school life. So she took the singing skills that she had learned with us, the singing leading skills, and took singing every day into year 3, bearing in mind that these year 3 classes hadn't had that in year 1 and 2. So it was new to them, and they're just that little bit older. And she also helped skill up the other year 3 class teacher so that they'd both be doing it. And we have continued to do some follow-up sessions, but not that many, just maybe 2 or 3 in the first term and 1 or 2 in this term that's just passed. And there are 2 magic moments for me really with this teacher. And one is that she has repeatedly said to me that she would not have the confidence to be leading this singing if it weren't for the project. And the other magic moment is my most recent session with those year 3 classes. And it was just an incredible session. I cannot begin to describe it. The children's singing progress has been fantastic. Their behavior was as if a choir of children who are used to singing. So they know about listening, sitting, listening, and they're learning everything by ear, picking it up very quickly, not afraid or disengaging when we approach more challenging music. I'm very happy to get on with that and succeeding hugely. It was that last session that I did before schools closed was absolutely incredible for these, in terms of how these year 3 children sang, how exciting they were, how quickly they learned, the sound of their singing, the things we could do with vocabulary, because we learned new songs with different vocabulary. It was phenomenal. And the thing that we have to keep in mind is that their classroom teachers are not trained musicians. They did probably an average amount of music in school when they went to school, but no more than that. They only had a little bit of support with teaching music when they did their teacher training. Neither identify as confident singers. And yet they are leading singing every day with these year 3 classes and just making such progress, and the children love it, and you can see that. And that was beyond magical for me, and it's one of the many reasons why I do this job. So I could, of course, go on forever talking about this project, about the Young Leader Project, about all of the education work we do, the exciting things that we see, the studies that I want to do, but of course our time is coming to an end. I do need to do a thank you. There are trusts and foundations and individual donors who support our education projects specifically. Without them, we could not reach as many children and teenagers and teachers as we do. And without organizations such as the Worshipful Company of Plasters, the Plasters Charities, that's a livery company, the Goldsmiths Charity, another livery company, the L.G. Harris Trust, the Arts Council, and some other individual donors, we would not have been able to develop, deliver, and have an external evaluation of the Sing Everyday project. And we wouldn't also then be able to, now we are out delivering it in more schools. So we are incredibly grateful for that support. And as you know, this is a very difficult time for all arts organizations, for everyone around the world, in fact, and for those of us that make our living through performing and through this kind of education, it's especially difficult. If you are able and so inclined to donate, we would be incredibly grateful for any help. And you can do that via our website. So that's VOCES8.Foundation. You can just www.VOCES8.Foundation. And you can see how to donate there. If you would like to know more about these projects that I've discussed, or other projects, or evaluation, or singing with schools and communities, I would be thrilled to answer questions, and I very much hope to do a live session where I can respond to your questions. And as I said, tell you about some of our other education work, including some of our work abroad, such as a wonderful project that we've been doing in France for a number of years. So thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. Please do visit our website, also to look at information about our education projects, to see that video if you'd like to, and have a lovely day. And I hope to see you all again and have some questions to answer at some point. Thank you very much.